Okay, so right now, if you're working in pharma in the US, you're probably feeling a little bit like caught between two forces,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
On the one hand, you're hearing all this news about layoffs and companies kind of pulling back on spending, but at the same time, the science is just moving so fast.
Right.
It feels like all this incredible innovation is happening.
Definitely.
So how do you make sense of all of that? How do you figure out where you fit into all of this? And that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
Exactly. And we're going to do that using a document we've been looking at called Navigating the Evolving Landscape of the U.S. Pharmaceutical Job Market.
Catchy title.
Super catchy. But I think this deep dive is going to really be a shortcut for you to understand the really important trends.
Love that.
We're going to break it down into a few different areas. First, we're going to look at the current state of the job market. 2024, 2025, where are we at?
Right.
Then we're going to really dig into what's behind these layoffs everyone's talking about. And then we'll flip it and look at the new jobs that are being created, all the growth areas.
Okay.
And then since this is a show for professionals, we're going to focus on the skills that you need to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah. Right.
And then we'll take a look at what's happening within different departments.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, some solid advice on how to get ready for what's coming next.
Love that.
And all of this is going to be based on this document. So think of us as your researchers breaking it down for you.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so even though things feel a little uncertain right now, the U.S. pharmaceutical market overall has a pretty strong story to tell, right?
Absolutely.
Globally, it's still the dominant player,
Mm-hmm.
and it's expected to grow significantly in the future.
Yeah, we're talking about a market that in 2023 was worth over $574 billion.
Wow.
And it's projected to hit almost $640 billion this year.
Wow.
And by 2030, it's supposed to pass $1 trillion.
So that long-term outlook, that seems pretty good.
It does. And I think one of the most interesting things about this is, why is it growing?
Yeah. Why?
So two main reasons. Chronic diseases are on the rise.
Okay.
We've got an aging population,
Makes sense.
right? So if you connect that back to what this means for you as a professional, is that the need for pharmaceutical products
Mm-hmm.
and the people who know how to make and get those to patients,
Mm-hmm.
that's not going away.
Right.
So yeah, there's some bumps in the road with the job market right now, but in the long run, the demand for skilled professionals
It's still there.
is still there. It's
And-
strong.
But we do have to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
That instability that people are feeling.
Right.
We've seen so many headlines about layoffs.
Yeah,
Companies are being really careful about what they're spending money on.
absolutely.
And there are even delays on important projects.
Yeah, we've seen all of that over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just what's going on within companies, right?
Yeah.
It's bigger than that.
Right.
There's like global stuff happening too. There are skill shortages, geopolitical tensions. The whole global economy is kind of shaky right now.
It's all connected.
It really feels like it's all coming together
Yeah.
at the same time.
Okay, so you mentioned biotech being particularly sensitive to interest rate changes.
Mhm.
Why is that?
So when it costs more to borrow money,
Okay.
which is what happens when interest rates go up,
Mm-hmm.
it's harder for biotech companies to get the funding they need for those long-term projects.
Right, because drug development takes a long time.
It does, and it's risky.
Makes sense.
So naturally, investors get a little hesitant,
Right.
and that trickles down to hiring and investment in the whole sector.
And then on top of all of that, we have the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Right, a huge development.
This is a really big change.
It's-
The fact that Medicare can now negotiate drug prices,
Yeah,
I mean, that feels like a game changer.
yeah.
How is that impacting everything?
It's forcing pharma companies to really think differently about how they make money. Because now Medicare has a say in the prices.
Mm-hmm.
So it has big implications for their R&D budgets.
Okay.
They can't just throw money at every new idea.
Makes sense.
They have to be super selective about what projects they take on.
Yeah, because they need to be sure they'll make money in this new system.
Exactly, return on investment.
Right.
That's the name of the game.
And the document also talks about patents expiring.
Oh, yeah?
We all know these blockbuster drugs that lose their patent protection,
Mhm.
and then suddenly there are all these cheaper generics.
Right.
What does that mean for the companies that made the original drugs?
So they start making less money,
Okay.
and then they have to cut costs somewhere.
Yeah, you can't just keep spending the same amount if your revenue's going down.
And unfortunately, sometimes that means letting people go.
So if we're trying to get to the bottom of why things feel so rocky right now,
Yeah.
it's not just one thing.
No, it's not.
It's the economy, the IRA, the whole biotech investment cycle.
Right. And I think for
Yeah,
people working in the industry, it's important to understand that bigger picture.
totally.
It helps put things in perspective.
But it's also important to remember that the pharma industry in the U.S. is huge.
Huge.
The document highlights that it employs over 1.3 million people directly
Yeah.
and then supports almost 5 million other jobs indirectly.
Right.
So even if companies are making adjustments, the overall impact on the economy is still massive.
It is. It's a big industry.
Okay, so let's dive into the details of the layoffs because I think that's what's on a lot of people's minds.
Mm.
The document mentions that biopharmaceutical layoffs increased a little in 2024.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is the jump in layoffs from the big players, the big pharma
Yeah.
companies.
That's definitely something to pay attention to.
Right, it makes you think it's not just a couple of isolated incidents.
No.
This seems more like a systemic shift.
More like a deliberate change in direction.
Yeah.
And there's some data from Fierce Biotech that really highlights this. They found that in 2024, at least 15,134 people lost their jobs.
Wow.
And that's across 86 biopharmaceutical companies who publicly shared their numbers.
So that's a lot of people.
And what's even more telling is that this trend has continued into 2025.
So this is not a blip,
No, this seems like a strategic move that companies are making.
a recalibration.
Exactly.
So let's talk about what's driving these layoffs.
Okay.
The document lists a whole bunch of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Financial pressure is an obvious one,
Right.
but it can't be that simple.
Definitely not. There are a lot of nuances at play.
Yeah, so walk us through some of those.
So, yeah, money is tight for a lot of companies,
Okay.
but that's usually tied to these strategic shifts they're making.
Okay.
They're really scrutinizing their drug development pipelines.
What does that mean?
So they're looking at the drugs they're working on,
Mm-hmm.
and they might stop projects that don't look so promising.
Oh, so they're cutting their losses.
Exactly. Or they might pull back from therapeutic areas where they think profits will go down.
Because of the IRA.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
because a key patent is about to expire.
Okay.
And then there's also this big push for efficiency.
Yeah, makes sense.
Like a lot of companies have announced cost-cutting measures.
Right. Got to trim the fat somewhere.
Exactly.
And I imagine the patent expirations are a big factor here, too.
Huge.
Because once those generics hit the market,
Mm-hmm.
the original companies take a big revenue hit.
They do. And that forces them to make some tough choices.
That staffing.
Yeah. And then sometimes you have clinical trials that fail.
Oh, right. That's heartbreaking.
It is, and it's expensive.
Yeah. And it probably means letting go of the team that was working on that.
Unfortunately, yes.
And we can't forget about COVID.
Right.
The demand for those products has gone way down.
Right, has. And
Yeah.
that's had a big impact on the companies that had ramped up production.
For sure, they had to hire all those people to meet that demand.
Yeah, and now that demand has dropped off, they've had to make adjustments.
And of course, the IRA is still looming over everything. Companies are having to rethink their long-term plans.
Absolutely. They need to figure out how they're going to make money in this new reality.
Right. And how that impacts staffing.
Exactly.
And then on top of all that,
Yeah.
we have mergers and acquisitions.
Oh, yeah.
Which sometimes lead to job losses because of overlap.
Absolutely. They're trying to create these leaner, more efficient companies.
And sometimes that means letting people go.
Unfortunately, yes.
So the document names some specific companies that have had big layoffs.
Mhm.
Bristol Myers, Squibb Novartis, Pfizer Bayer, Takeda Pharmaceuticals, Genentech, Moderna, IZ Charles, River Laboratories, Thermo, Fisher Scientific.
Yeah, those are some big names.
Yeah, and the numbers are pretty startling.
Bristol Myers Squibb, for example, they cut over 1,300 jobs in Lawrenceville, New Jersey in 2024,
Wow.
and they're planning more cuts in 2025.
They're aiming to save $2 billion by the end of 2027.
Big goals.
Yeah. And then Novartis, they cut about 680 jobs in project development,
Oh, wow.
and those cuts were both in the U.S. and Switzerland, including 427 at their headquarters in New Jersey,
And Pfizer cut hundreds of jobs because of the drop in COVID product demand.
trying to save $4 billion overall.
And then there's Bayer restructuring globally, impacting about 1,600 jobs,
Wow.
mostly in management.
And Takeda, they cut over 1,100 jobs in the U.S. and Europe.
And Genentech, a Roche company,
Mm-hmm.
they let go about 436 people at their headquarters in South San Francisco,
And Moderna, they reduced their digital workforce by 10%.
which is about 50 roles.
And IZE, they cut 121 employees in the U.S.
So about 6.8% of their workforce.
because of restructuring.
Charles River Laboratories,
Mm-hmm.
they've cut over 1,300 jobs since 2023.
Also restructuring.
Yep.
And then finally, Thermo Fisher Scientific, they cut 300 jobs at their viral vector manufacturing sites
Oh, wow.
in Massachusetts.
So these are not small changes.
No, they're not.
These are big shifts in how companies are thinking about their workforce.
It's a new reality.
And the document points out something else that's really interesting.
What's that? Most of these layoffs are happening in the major pharmaceutical hubs.
Right, like New Jersey, Massachusetts, and California.
Exactly. So it's not just a scattered impact.
No, it's concentrated in these areas.
Which are the centers of innovation for the industry.
It's where a lot of the talent is.
Yeah.
So those layoffs have ripple effects.
Right, through those local economies.
Exactly, and within those professional networks.
So it's a pretty complex situation.
It is.
But we did promise some good news.
We do.
And the document does talk about emerging horizons.
Yeah.
These new job opportunities and growth areas within pharma.
This is where things start to look a little brighter.
Yeah, for people who are willing to adapt and maybe learn some new skills.
Absolutely.
So what are some of these exciting new developments?
So we're in this incredible time of data-driven discovery. Things like genomics, artificial intelligence, and transcriptomics.
Now remind me what transcriptomics is again.
That's the study of RNA molecules.
Right.
And all of this is giving us a much deeper understanding of how diseases work.
Okay.
And that's leading to the development of personalized and precision medicine.
So treatments that are tailored to an individual's unique biology.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
It is.
And then you add to that the huge amount of data we have now, combined with these powerful AI and machine learning algorithms.
Right.
And it's really changing everything,
How so?
from how we deliver healthcare to how we discover and develop new drugs.
Wow.
The document even says that AI could be involved in 30% of new drug discoveries by next year.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and that could mean lower development costs and faster access to personalized treatments.
That would be a huge win.
It would, and the investment in AI in healthcare is just going to keep growing.
How much are we talking?
It's projected to reach $188 billion by 2030.
That's a lot of money.
That's a clear sign that this is a major trend.
So it sounds pharma companies are investing heavily in data infrastructure,
Yep.
digital transformation, and AI integration across all their operations.
That's right.
And that means they need people who have those skills.
Absolutely. If you have expertise in data science, digital transformation, or AI, you're in a good spot.
That makes sense.
And it's not just about the technology.
No.
Companies are also shifting their focus to therapeutic areas with a lot of unmet medical needs,
Like what?
like Alzheimer's disease and weight management.
Yeah, those are big ones.
Huge. And there's a lot of opportunity for innovation in those areas.
And we're also seeing new therapeutic modalities emerging.
Yes. Things like fusion proteins,
Bet.
oligonucleotide-based therapies,
Yeah.
multispecific antibodies, ADCs, radioligand therapies, and oncolytic viruses.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
There's a lot of exciting science happening right now.
And of course, we can't forget about the GLP-1 receptor agonist market.
Those weight loss drugs.
Yeah, those have been huge.
They have. It's a completely different way of thinking about obesity.
And it's just one example of how quickly things can change in this industry.
Absolutely. And the investment in other transformative therapies is still strong.
Like gene and cell therapies, ADCs, and CAR-T therapies.
Yes, those are still big areas of research.
So even though we're seeing layoffs in some of the more traditional areas of pharma,
Right.
there's a lot of dynamism in biotech and in these new therapeutic areas.
Absolutely. And the numbers back that up.
Yeah.
The biotech industry brought in hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue in 2024.
And they have over 430,000 employees.
And that number is only going to go up.
It's an exciting time to be in biotech.
It really is.
Then there's digital health,
Right.
telehealth patient portals, at-home diagnostic,
But the whole area is booming.
and health informatics is growing too.
Absolutely, because of
Right.
all the new technology and telemedicine.
So it feels like we're seeing this convergence
Yes.
of pharma, biotech, and digital health,
It's all coming together.
which means new kinds of jobs are being created.
Yes. Jobs that require skills from all those different areas.
So if you can bridge those worlds, you're going to be in high demand.
You are.
So what does all of this mean for someone working in pharma right now?
I think the biggest takeaway is that you have to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah, you can't just rest on your laurels.
No, this industry changes too fast.
You have to adapt.
Absolutely be open to change, learn new things, and stay up to date on the latest science regulations and market trends.
That growth mindset is so important.
It's essential.
But it's not just about technical skills anymore.
Right.
The document emphasizes the importance of soft skills.
Absolutely. Things like communication, teamwork, problem solving, and emotional intelligence.
So being able to work well with others,
Yeah, and to communicate complex information clearly.
especially in a field like pharma.
Right. You're often dealing with highly technical information.
And you need to be able to explain that to people who don't have a scientific background.
Exactly, whether it's your colleagues, regulators, or marketing teams.
So if you want to stay ahead of the game,
Mm-hmm.
what are some specific skills you should be focusing on?
So data science and analytics is huge.
Because of AI and machine learning,
Exactly.
and then biotech, especially genetic engineering and cell therapy,
Those are hot areas.
and digital health technologies,
Yeah, forget those.
and health informatics,
Right.
and then good old-fashioned regulatory affairs and compliance,
Always important.
and strong project management skills.
Those are valuable in any field.
And finally, market access and HER.
Health economics outcomes
Yeah.
research.
Yeah, that's becoming more and more important.
Absolutely. Companies want to prove that their products are worth the cost.
And that's why HER comes in.
Exactly.
So these layoffs we've been talking about, they're not just happening in one department.
No, they're happening across the board.
R&D, sales, manufacturing, IT, even general management.
Yeah, companies are streamlining everywhere.
But on the flip side, there are some departments that are actually growing.
Yep.
So tell us about those.
So as we've talked about, data science and analytics is booming. They need people who can use AI and machine learning for drug discovery,
Right.
clinical trial optimization, and personalized medicine.
And then medical affairs.
Yes, medical science, liaisons, and medical writers.
Those roles are in high demand.
They are.
And clinical research,
Mhm.
clinical research associates, clinical data managers,
Still a lot of need for those folks.
and regulatory affairs and compliance.
Those jobs are always going to be there.
Yeah, somebody's got to make sure everything's by the book.
Exactly.
And then biotech and biologics manufacturing.
They need people with expertise in bioprocess engineering and quality control.
And then finally, market access and HER.
Yes, those roles are growing quickly.
So if you're in one of those areas,
Mm-hmm.
your prospects are looking pretty good.
They are?
So let's talk about what you can do if you're facing a job transition, or even if you're just looking to get ahead in your career.
Right.
The document has some really practical advice.
It does.
First, it says you should take some time to reflect.
Yeah, look back on your past job searches.
Figure out what worked and what didn't.
Exactly.
And then really think about your career goals.
What do you want to be doing in 5 years, in 10 years?
Right.
And do a SWOT analysis.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Exactly. It helps you see where you stand.
And then think about your transferable skills.
Yes.
Yeah.
What can you take from your current role and apply to a new one,
Even if it's in a different area of pharma.
or even outside of pharma?
Right.
And then networking is key.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, industry events,
Yeah.
professional organizations.
Those are all great ways to meet people.
And you never know who might be able to help you in your job search.
And then your resume and cover letter.
Yes. Make sure they're tailored to each specific job you apply for.
And use industry keywords.
Yes. Those are the words that hiring managers are looking for.
And don't forget to quantify your achievements.
Use numbers to show what you've accomplished.
And if you're trying to break into a new area, think about doing an internship or a contract position.
That can be a great way to gain experience.
And then, of course, you have to prepare for job interviews.
Yes. Do your research on the company and practice answering those behavioral questions.
And really focus on how your skills match the needs of the role.
Exactly.
So those are all great tips for anyone looking for a new job.
We are.
But what about taking advantage of those emerging job opportunities?
Right.
What's the best way to position yourself for those?
So first, you need to figure out which specific areas you're interested in.
Right. Data science, biotech, digital health.
Exactly. And then you need to start developing your skills in those areas.
So take some classes, go to some conferences, get certified.
Exactly. And keep building your network.
Right. Go to those industry events, meet people online.
And there are some really cool AI-powered job search tools out there.
Yeah, they can help you find the right opportunities.
And then make sure you're staying up to date on the latest industry news.
Read those journals and publications.
Yes, and join those professional organizations.
And then finally, what are some key things that pharma professionals should be aware of?
To stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly.
So GMP regulations and compliance are still crucial.
Good manufacturing practice.
Right, you have to understand those rules.
And the whole drug development process.
From preclinical research to clinical trials to regulatory approval.
That's the foundation.
It is.
And then you have to stay on top of the industry trends.
Like AI, digital health, personalized medicine and sustainability.
Those are all big areas.
Yeah, and they're changing all the time,
And then finally, the regulatory landscape.
especially with the impact of the IRA.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is, and there could be more changes coming.
So you have to stay informed.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it sounds like the pharma job market right now is a mix of good and bad.
Yes.
Layoffs are happening.
But there's also a lot of growth in certain areas.
And the long-term outlook is still positive,
It is.
especially if you're willing to adapt and learn new skills.
Absolutely.
So if you're listening to this and you're working in pharma,
Yeah.
think about what you can do today
Right now,
to prepare for the future,
what's one small step you can take?
to make sure you're ready for whatever comes next.
That's the question to ask yourself.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks, everyone.